welcome everybody. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I think you guys are familiar with Jill. I'm actually familiar with some of you guys. We've met in the past. So thank you for having me this evening. Tonight, we're going to talk about fishing the Wood River Valley, but specifically Silver Creek and the Big Wood River. And a little note here from Jill. I can tell you where to go and what flies to put on, but the experience is yours. As you explore and become familiar, you will find your own joy. Thanks, Jill. I like that. So I'm Morgan. I am the shop manager at Peekaboo Angler. I work in the fly shop, and I'm also a guide out of Peekaboo Angler. I'm a great resource for you if you're looking to fish Silver Creek. Not only do I work here, I also live here. So I live, work, and play in Peekaboo on Silver Creek quite regularly. If you're ever wanting to know what's going on at different parts of the year, please feel free to give me a call or send me an email. I'm happy to give you an update on what's going on out there.
Morgan's also the president of our 5B Anglers Club, which she'll talk about in a minute.
Oh, thank you, Jill. The access map, if you guys saw, Jill did put a comment in the chat at the beginning of tonight's meeting. If you'd like one of these maps, please give us your contact info. This is something we sell at Peekaboo Angler. I always say it's the best dollar you can spend in our store. It has 48 access points on the Big Wood River, and then 6 access points within the Peekaboo area of Silver Creek as well. And we'll share a few of our favorite access points. Of course, we won't have time to go through these, but please feel free to do your own exploring while you're up here. There's great descriptions within this map of each of these access points along the rivers. So as I said, we'll mail you a copy of not only this map, but the hatch charts that we'll be taking a look at today as well. So if you put your full name and mailing address in the chat, at this point, Jill will copy those down. I'll kind of monitor those when we switch gears to her side of the presentation. And we will get those out to you guys as soon as we can. Silvercreek.com has digital resources for you guys. You can look at these maps online or download them for yourself. If you'd like a digital copy of them, you can check them out on Silver Creek's website. So I'm here to talk to you guys mainly about Silver Creek and your resources around Peekaboo. As far as a larger overview of Silver Creek, right here at our access point 70 is where we have our headwaters of Silver Creek in this area. This is Silver Creek Preserve within this green boxed area. This is private property with public access. And because it's private property and owned by the Nature Conservancy, they do ask you to check in when you're fishing on this property. In the past, they used to have a sign-in center. But as some of you may have noticed over the past few years due to COVID and also construction, there is now a digital way to do this where you send a text to a phone number and it'll send you a form back to just ask some contact details. I think it also asks about like the make and model of your car and what activity you're in the preserve to do, whether that be hiking or fishing. Everybody that goes into the preserve does need to check in. When you guys are here, the visitor center will be newly constructed and reopened by opening day this year. So that's Memorial Day weekend. So if you are wanting to check that out, it's going to be a beautiful new building and great views and great learning opportunities on just the local wildlife, plants and animals you can get there. Moving through Silver Creek, we head over towards Kilpatrick Bridge, and this is the road from Highway 20 that takes you into the creek. It goes into Kilpatrick Pond over here. where you can float tube, and I'll speak a little bit more about our walk wading versus float tubing in a little bit. It then goes through some private property before going under Highway 20 to another access point that's right here on the highway, and then floating down and through those public access campgrounds, and then again out through some private property here. The creek does go further, under Highway 20 again, and it dumps out actually into the Littlewood River. Later in the season, it does start to get very thin down in that desert stretch of the creek, and the fishing isn't always wonderful. So I would say to stick towards the headwaters of the creek when you come up here towards the end of June. So what you need to know about fishing Silver Creek. Dries and nymphs are typically what we are fishing. They're usually all very small, and we'll take a look at the hatch chart in the next slide. But you'll be seeing caddis, baetis, drakes, ants, and beetles. For those caddis, baetis, and drakes, don't just think of them as dry flies, but as their nymph form as well. A drake nymph can do really well in the creek, as well as a damsel nymph at that time of year. And I typically float those smaller nymphs underneath a foam fly or a New Zealand strike indicator, something very delicate. Because Silver Creek is so slow moving and meandering, I find that those large indicators can sometimes cause drag and kind of mess up on that presentation. Which kind of brings me to these next points along this list, which includes long leaders and thin tippet with that flawless Silver Creek presentation. You don't want any drag on that presentation because this stream is so slow moving, so clear. Those fish have the time and the visibility to really get a good look at what's being presented to them. So it is important to do a great cast to these fish when you're kind of targeting them specifically on the creek. As far as leaders, I like to buy a 10-foot 4X leader, and I build it down from there with some 5X and then some 6X to make it a nice long leader down to that 6X. You need that 6X for those tiny bugs, again, for that presentation. Wading can be an issue on Silver Creek. It is very mucky and muddy. The silt bottom can be a little deceiving when you see it. You can kind of sink down into it, and it can be difficult to walk. So do keep a friend nearby because you can get a little sucked into that mud. So definitely use the buddy system on the creek. There's also wildlife out there, of course, that you want to be aware of. There's moose around the creek. But yeah, wading can be difficult. There's also a lot of muskrat holes kind of along those cut banks on the creek. So really watch your step as you are walking along the banks of Silver Creek.
Morgan, I have a quick question if you don't mind. Up in the Conservancy, they've just installed those new walkways.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that just a little bit?
Sure. So I have a better map in a few slides that will really show you where each of those access points is. But as of last year, the Conservancy now has designated areas for you to access Silver Creek. So if you're fishing in those headwaters in the Nature Conservancy, you will see small signs with designated areas where you need to go in and out of the creek. And this is really to prevent erosion around the creek, so that everybody's not just kind of going in wherever. It also helps because a lot of these access points are close to a good rocky area where you're not going to muck up the water. And you can kind of stay on a gravel bar and fish downstream. So taking a look at the water and making sure you're aware of those access points within the Conservancy is very important. The map I show you in a few slides has those access points designated on them. And the map is from Silver Creek Conservancy's website if you want to take a look at it or take a screenshot of it tonight when I go over it. So some of those bugs that we were just talking about, this is kind of just a more visual way to get an idea of what hatches you might see on the creek. Like I said, that damselfly is kind of early on in the season, but those nymphs might be working well. Ants and beetles are always a great choice, especially if you're nymphing and you want to run something underneath them. And then we've got our drakes, which you may be catching the end of, as well as caddises and some baetis that will start coming off towards the end of June as well. And then the PMDs are pretty heavy in the mornings and afternoons on the creek. So you'll definitely catch those. I would say you're going to see most of these hatches early in the day and then later in the afternoon. If you're looking to fish the creek midday when it's hot, you're better chance of nymphing. Those fish are kind of staying low when it's warmer out and there's not a ton of bug activity happening. But until about 11 o'clock, maybe in the summertime, she'll get some bug activity in the mornings. And then when that sun starts to drop in the evenings, you'll see those bugs start to come back up again. At peekabooangler.com, you can find a different version of a hatch chart. This one just has real pictures of the bugs that you might see on the creek. I think this gives you a great visualization on, how to match that hatch. You don't necessarily need to know the names of all these bugs, but as long as you're familiar of what to look for, these different mayflies, what they look like, size and shape is so important. So take a look at what you see, floating down the water, what you see in the reeds along the creek, and try to match that hatch the best you can. So here's that access map for Silver Creek with the different specific fishing access points. You can walk and wade the entire length of Silver Creek. It would be difficult. It would be a long, tiring walk. Probably a lot of muddy holes and stuff, but you can definitely walk wade the entire thing. However, you cannot float tube the whole thing. It is walk wade in the upper part of the preserve. Preserve is also fly fishing only. So this really keeps down on, putting too much pressure on the habitat for the fish throughout the conservancy. So as you can see, there's all these fishing access points. Over here is where you would park for the visitor center. But at each of these trailheads, you'll find a sign with that number that you can check in on before you're going into the park. Our float tube only section is down here, and we call this the S turns. As you can see, it has T4 and T3. These are tubing access points. So you can put in right here and float down through what we call the S turns. And then I typically will get out right over here. So I really I'll park my car around this trailhead, walk myself and my float tube to this access point, and then float through the S turns, come out here, and you're really not too far down the road from where you started off. This float will take a couple hours to do, so it's not a quick float. I typically take about, maybe 2-3 hours to do that float from just, this point to this point, because you are stopping, you're looking for those fish, and kind of taking your time, really slowly moving through the water. Did you have a question, Rhonda?
I did. I was just, I noticed here in Conservancy, it says butt must be in the water, no oar draft. So a lot of us have those fish cats that you're not sitting in the water like the donuts that you can rent at Peekaboo Angler. We've heard mixed stories. Can we use those fish cats?
You can use a U-boat. It does not have to be round.
Okay.
But the description through Fish and Game and on the Conservancy is butt in the water. Jill, I don't know if you can add to that. I know we were speaking a little bit to this today.
Yeah, I know definitely no watercraft with oars for sure. So
Sure.
some of you have those fish cats, that's a no.
Well, some of the fish cats don't have oars and they're in a seat, but I mean, it's right next to the water. So there's just been some confusion whether we can use those. I mean, if all else fails, we could rent a donut, but
Right. It's really difficult because that's in the Fish and Game regulations, and whatever they determine to be butt in the water, I'm not exactly sure. I've gotten away with my butt being at the surface of the water,
Mhm.
and nobody's said anything to me. I think you
Okay.
could probably get away with that just fine.
Okay.
Jill, what about the new float tubes that many of us just bought? Do you think those will sink?
I think those will be perfect.
Okay.
Awesome.
And you
that's
know,
great.
those new wilderness lights that many of us bought, I bought one too. They have that inflatable seat. And you can choose to not put the inflatable seat in and just be in the fabric hammock, you know, with your butt down in the water. And I think that would be perfectly acceptable.
Cool. That's great.
Yeah, Barbara, underinflate. I think that's a good idea too. Definitely.
Yeah, it's becoming harder and harder. I understand that butt in the water, no oared rafts, no oars is probably an easier task to handle, but the butt in the water is becoming more difficult
Right.
year after year. I actually contacted Bucks Bags this week and they're not making float tubes anymore. So that was who we relied on for those butt in the water float tubes.
Sure. Mhm.
So I do think that they're going to have to, you know, take another look at this rule and how it's written, because if there's not an option for us, then, you know, those, I don't see why your boat wouldn't work.
Right.
There's
Okay.
not another
Hey,
option.
Morgan, there's a question here in the chat about inflatable paddle boards. Where would you recommend that happen?
So you can still float through Silver Creek. If you would like to do just a nature float, you can certainly float on a paddleboard through Silver Creek Preserve. But to paddleboard, you'll want to do that downstream from Highway 20. So here's where we were just looking at the preserve over here in this green area. Downstream from Highway 20, you can put in a raft, a paddleboard, a kayak, a canoe, and you can certainly take that all the way down through Silver Creek and pull out all the way down here and fish from that the whole way down. So if you're looking to float it on a paddleboard and do some fishing, you can certainly do that in the section from 67 here all the way over to 64. Excuse me. And I really enjoy that for other short trips. You know, if I'm not in the preserve area specifically, putting in right here on the highway and floating down to either of the campgrounds is a really great option. And then if you're looking for a longer trip, oh, do we have a question? No? Okay. If you're looking for a longer trip, like a more of a fuller day trip than just a couple hours from Point of Rocks, this campground that some of you may be staying at, all the way down to the Peekaboo Bridge down here is a great float. It's a lot of water that doesn't get touched very often. And you can see some great fish along some of these curvy areas in the river. There are also certain access points along this area right here that are accessible to walk wading. It is private property, so do make sure that you're, you know, taking the access points that they have provided to you. There's a few fences with ladders over them. It's very clear what they're there for, with paths right down to the river. Then one more spot to fish, not exactly Silver Creek, but just up the creek from Silver Creek is Haysboro Hatchery. another free campground for you guys to check out if you're interested in that one. And it's also a great place for beginners, kids, any kind of casting practice you guys want to do. It's a stocked pond with the hatchery right next door. And it just gives you a great chance to do a little bit of practice casting, practice setting the hook. If you're wanting to practice, streamers or whatever it is, it's a really good place to go over and just do that. And you'll get on a fish. And your closest fly shop is going to be Peekaboo Angler. We have our fly shop that is open all day in the summer, along with our convenience store till 8 p.m. We've got a grill that has burgers and sandwiches and wraps and salads for lunch. And we do a full breakfast as well. I believe we do it from 7 to 11 in the summer times. We do breakfast. We also offer guided trips right out of our shop. So if you're interested in those, please feel free to reach out to myself. The number listed here is Peekaboo Angler's shop number, and then my personal email if you'd like to send me an email. This picture here is me on Kilpatrick Pond, probably around the same times you guys will be out there. This is an evening picture, believe it or not, fishing a June evening, and just, small dry flies and some success in the pond. As far as camping, I know we mentioned quite a few places to camp. It can be a little overwhelming knowing where to go. Peekaboo Angler does offer an RV park with hookups if you're looking for some of those comforts of water and electric. But as far as free camping and, just dry camping, Haysper Hatchery, Point of Rocks, and West Silver Creek, or the Willows as we call it, are all just first come, first serve, dispersed camping. And these spots are all within a mile of each other. So our RV park is right over here for the angler. It's right across the street. And then we have Point of Rocks over here and Silver Creek West, or the Willows, and then Haysper Hatchery up here. So any of these that you choose, you guys will all be very close to one another, be able to meet up, in the mornings or afternoons, what have you. Oops. And as a final slide, if you guys are up here often, please consider joining our fly fishing group up in the Wood River Valley. We are newly started this year, but we've had a few successful events. We're the 5B anglers, and we've done some ice fishing already this year, and we plan to have a kids camp this summer, which is really exciting. So if you spend time up here in the summer or at any point in the year, or just want a little bit more information specifically about fishing the Wood River Valley, please do consider joining us. And I think with that, I'm going to hand things over to Jill to talk about the Big Wood, unless there's any Silver Creek specific questions you want me to kind of get ahead of right now.
I have one.
Sure.
Can you talk about the importance of knots, specifically as you're building down your tippet, on the preserve and, floating Silver Creek, why it's so important to have a good knot?
Well, there's some big fish in there. So to hook into one of them and break off would be heartbreaking. I've done it. And you never know when that big giant Silver Creek brown is going to rise up for that fish. So making sure you have, a new leader, strong tippet. If you've had tippet that's, been on a ring and dipping in the water, all season, last season, it's probably not, and sitting out in the sun, it's probably not as strong as it should be. So making sure that your gear is, clean, your knots are good. And also, you're clipping off all those tag ends, because everything really matters in the presentation to your fish on Silver Creek.
Mm-hmm. We had a guide last year that recommended we use a blood knot
On your tippet?
Right. Isn't that what he did? Lizzie changed out your line and didn't change out mine, and mine snapped.
Yeah, he used the blood knot. He looked at your
Blood
knots
knot.
and said they looked fine. And then you lost your big fish.
Yeah, and I cried. I didn't cry, but I wanted to cry.
I probably would have cried with you.
Morgan, I had a question, because last summer, it was so hot, the conservation area was closed. How did the fish fare?
So early in the season, before the Nature Conservancy decided to close the waters, there was a fish kill in the lower part of the preserve, closer to the Kilpatrick Pond, kind of a area that had lower waters. It just heated up really quickly. And that was really what prompted them to make the closure. But after that, I think the pressure of people just staying off the creek, because only the preserve was closed, but people really kind of gave respect to the fish across all of Silver Creek, kind of making sure to check those temperatures and, stay off the water when needed. That I've been fishing it, the past couple of months, and the fish are healthy, they're happy, they're back to moving around. So I do think with the effort of local anglers that they've fared well, and
Good.
you'll definitely be still seeing a good amount of fish in Silver Creek this year.
Oh, that's good to know. Thanks.
Morgan, how's the snowpack this year?
It's not where we want it. We're hoping we get another big storm before spring comes, but it's better than it's been. And because it's been so cold out here in Peekaboo, I don't think it's gotten above freezing in a month. It's sticking around, which is good. We don't want it to melt off too fast and then it's all gone. So if our snow right now can just stick around, that would be great.
Great answer. Any other questions?
Okay, we'll put them in the chat if you have any, or send me a direct chat message. And Jill, while you are speaking, I will monitor that chat room.
Super. Can you guys all hear me okay?
You sure can.
Great. Well, hello, I'm Jill. I live here in Bellevue. I work at Silver Creek Outfitters as a guide and a casting instructor. And I'm going to be speaking tonight to you a little bit about some of the bigwood access points. As you saw in that map, there are 48 access points in the bigwood, and we couldn't even begin to talk about all of those places. So I'm going to try to tell you about 5 places that are my favorites, and places that other people maybe don't go to, which will give you a little bit more of a unique and maybe more private experience. So on that map, I'm going to start the furthest away from where you're staying. So if you get on the road on the Bigwood and you drive 13 miles north of Ketchum, you're going to find 3 places that I love to fish that aren't even on the map. And so people at guide shops or people who tell you where to go probably won't tell you about these places, most likely. We kind of reserve them for ourselves as guides, and we like to fish those spots. So we don't tell people who aren't locals where these spots are. So I'm giving you special information. So if you drive, the spot number 1 on the map is right here at the SNRA, the Sawtooth National Recreation Area. And that spot is 10 miles north of Ketchum. So that's number 1 on the map. Well, keep going 3 more miles. As you drive 3 more miles, you're going to come across Wood River Campground. And you'll know you're there because it's these brown and white signs that are on the side of the road. It'll tell you Wood River Campground, 1/4 mile. That's how you find it. So if you turn in there, there's a wooden bridge, and it's great fishing right there at the bridge. If you go another, I don't know, half a mile or so, you'll end up at Cathedral Pines. and you can turn in there and there's a beautiful wooden bridge. Or if you go another half a mile, you've got Easley Campground, and that's another beautiful wooden bridge. So a secret that I know about these bridges is that Fish and Game plants fish off of these bridges. Truthfully, they dump them in, and there are some good fish in there that are stocked. So if you want a place where you know that there are going to be fish, it's a great place to go. You can fish up or down from the bridges. You can go all along that whole area. You can make an entire day of it just fishing up and down that whole section of river. And it's beautiful, and not a lot of people know about it. It's not even on the map, but now you know about it. So it's worth the drive. Go on up there, 13 miles past Ketchum. Let's see. Fish and Game plants fish there. I told you that. This is what it looks like. Here's a picture of this beautiful bridge. You can go in there. It's easy wading. It's never really too deep or too scary as far as wading. Here's a picture of Jane. She's on this call. She caught a fish right there by that bridge. That's a picture of her looking so cute in her hat. A little tip, if you want to go into Wood River Campground and park in their day use area, they will charge you $7 for a day use fee to park there so that you can walk down and fish. Well, if you don't want to pay that $7 fee and fill out the paperwork for the day use fee, park up on the highway. And if you park up on the highway, there's a big open parking area right there at the highway, and just walk down the hill and fish the river and just fish all the way down towards the campground, and you can park there for free. And so that's a little tip to save you some money if you don't want to park in that day use area. Just keep going. There's a big turnout right there at the top. It's a little bit of walking, but it's not bad. Let's see. Then the next place I want to tell you about is, if you noticed, I'm not telling you anything about spots 1 through 9 on the map. And the reason why is because that's right through the town of Ketchum and right through the busiest, most populated part of Ketchum and where the most houses are. And I don't like to fish that section so much. I like to fish where there are fewer people and people don't really know about the access points. So I would skip 1 through 9 and I would go to spot number 10 on the map. And that's called Broadway Run South. You can get there 2 ways. You can just turn right by the hospital, which is called Broadway Run, or you can turn in at the Mountain Meadows RV Park sign. There's a great big sign on the side of the road, and just drive in there just maybe 1/4 of a mile and park in the pullout. And if you know to look for these 2 opposing arrow signs right here, the access is a spot in the fence between 2 fence posts. It's very visible in the summertime. It's kind of covered up by snow in this picture, but just walk right in there. The river is just straight ahead, just a few feet, and there's a beautiful little rocky run right there. It's gorgeous and it's hidden. There's hardly ever anybody in there. And I fish it quite often, and I always catch fish in there. It's a really nice little spot. So I would avoid spot number 11, which is Boxcar Bend. That's the spot that you can see from the highway as you're driving past, and you can see the people fishing down there. Most of the fly shops in Ketchum tell people to go fish there because it's easy to find. So I'm telling you not to go there, right? Because there's just too many people there. I don't catch a lot of fish there very often, and it's crowded and it's visible to the public, so everybody knows to go there. So avoid that spot. Go to somewhere better. Go to somewhere cooler. So that's the spot that I would recommend. Number 10, Broadway Run. Then coming down between Haley and Ketchum, there are 48 spots on the map, but a spot that's really nice to go to that people don't often go to because they're intimidated by the signage there is Flying Heart Ranch. And so a couple of little things about Flying Heart Ranch and why I like to fish there. So there was a lawsuit, and Trout Unlimited and Silver Creek Outfitters we were in that lawsuit, and we won. And what the lawsuit was about was that the people who live in Flying Heart Ranch didn't want to grant access for parking at those two access points that are in Flying Heart Ranch. And so there was a lawsuit over that, and those folks lost. And so there are two cars can park at each of the two access points in at Flying Heart Ranch. And so if you're not quite sure where to park and you're not sure, I always tell people park right under the power lines. So look at this picture right here on the right. These are the big power lines. They're very visible. It's easy to see, easy to find. And there's a little tiny white post right here. You see that little tiny white post with the arrow by it? Is that post had a sign on it that said you could park there. But that sign mysteriously disappeared. And so it's almost like they didn't want us to park there. So when you see that white sign right there, you can park two cars right there legally with no problem and have total access to this area. So when you're coming in, the Flying Heart Ranch sign looks like this this chaparral over the road right here. So you'll know you're driving in to a subdivision, and you might see some of these signs right here that are put up. They're meant to, oh, sorry, my bad. They're meant to be intimidating. They want you to think that you can't go in there, but you totally can. So you should. When you're looking for the access, it's between this fence. There's a nice wide open area and a beautiful trail right along here in between these two fence posts and this opening. And it's delineated by this white skinny post with a little brown square on the top with a little fish in it. And all of the accesses that you'll be looking for along the Big Wood have this same signage post from the Blaine County Recreation District. They put them there to tell you that that's a public access easement. So I guess what I'm telling you is that not many people fish in this section. It's a beautiful long run. It can hold, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 fishermen. And it's not very populated usually by people. So go in there and park and don't be intimidated by those signs. Question about that? Just do it.
I got a question.
Yeah.
So those two pictures, you got 2 arrows. The top picture has the little white post, and then the bottom, they're not the same picture as I understand, correct?
That's correct. They're 2 different pictures. The white post in the top picture is where you should park.
Okay.
And the white post in the, oh gosh, I just keep hitting, sorry. The white post in the bottom picture is, tells you where the trail is. And you walk in on that trail and you'll go right to the river.
How far is the bottom picture from the top picture?
Right across the street. They're right across the street from each other. That's a good question.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So as you want to access the Big Wood River between Haley and Bellevue, the place that I would recommend that you go, I love spots number 22 and 23 on the map, and that's Colorado Gulch. And Colorado Gulch is accessed off of Broadford Road. And there are 2 big bridges actually, but the road bridge number 1 and the Colorado Gulch Road are not too far from each other. They're both right on the river. So you could either park at the bridge or park on the Colorado Gulch Road, and you could fish that whole section. You can just kind of do a loop. So you'd maybe park at Colorado Gulch Road, fish that whole river, and then get out at the Broadford Bridge and just walk down the street back to your car. It's a really simple, nice place. It's 1 mile south of Haley on Broadford Road. And there's a nice dirt parking area. It's easy to access. It's easy to park. There's a beautiful trail. Don't worry if there are several cars there already, because it's a really popular dog walking spot. And even if you're parked with 3 or 4 other cars, chances are there are no fishermen in there, that those people are just dog walkers. And sometimes you can kind of scope out the car and it'll tell you. If they've got a rod rack and you look in the back and there's waders and there's like, oh, that's a fisherman. Or if you look in the back and there's dog hair and leashes, you'll know that those people aren't fishing and you're fine. So that's a beautiful area to access. And I'm telling you about this area because there's not a lot of people there, and it's nice and it's pretty and it's easy, and you can fish all day there. It's a gorgeous spot. South Bellevue, if you want to go to a spot that's really close to, where you're camping, you just drive up from Peekaboo where you're camping. And in South Bellevue, there's a beautiful section of river. It's called Driftwood Ranch. It's number 29 on the map. And it's kind of funny to get to because you turn west on Riverview Drive onto the Wood River Meadows subdivision, and you think it's just a whole series of houses and a subdivision. So when you drive in there, you think you're in the wrong spot because you have to drive through the houses and down the road. And once you get past the houses, the road just has a T, and there are 3 different access points there that are all great fishing and easy to access. So if you turn right at the T and go to the end of the road, there's a nice parking area there, and the trail just goes right to the river. It's very easy to find and really simple. If you park at the end of the T, there's only room there for about 1 car, but you'll see that white signpost with the little brown square and the fish on it. So you'll see that you can park right there, and that puts you in the middle of the run. Or if you turn left on that road and you go to the end, there's another nice kind of a cul-de-sac parking area right there, and that can accommodate probably 2 or 3 cars as well. So there's plenty of space for everybody down there at spot number 29, which is called Driftwood Ranch. But you have to drive through the Wood River Meadows subdivision to get there. So when you turn on that road, you're going to think you're in the wrong spot, but you're not. Just keep going. It'll dead
Who's
end.
the little girl?
Oh, that little girl is Eddie Ann, and Eddie Ann is she fishes with me every year. I think she's going to be 11 this year. So I fished with her. She was 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So I think this will be my 4th or 5th year fishing with her. She is just a cutie pie. I love fishing with kids. So fun. She's adorable. All right, let's see. I want to invite you all, if you're coming up here for, for the outing with your group, on June 26th, Silver Creek Outfitters has allowed us access to fish their private lake for free even, which is amazing. I think that's great. Terry Ring, who's the owner of Silver Creek Outfitters, I told him that the women fly fishers would be here in the valley and that they wanted a place to try out all of the new float tubes that you all just bought. Me too. So this is a floating lake. It's wade fishing is not possible. If you can see all the cattails around this lake, it's not a lake that allows for fishing from the banks. So if you have a float tube and you want to try it out, even if it's the very first time that you've been out with your new tube and you just want to practice blowing it up and practice putting on your fins and figuring out your life jacket and figuring out what to put in your pockets and go out there and fish, I think we can accommodate, probably up to 10 people in tubes out there. There's a big, nice parking area, a picnic table and a porta potty. And so this is a spot where everybody's welcome. I'll be out there and fishing with you. I think we'll be like 9 to 1-ish. So if you'd like to try not a river opportunity, like the Big Wood or Silver Creek, if you want to try a lake opportunity, this would be a great place to try out your new float tubes. It's very safe. There is no current. Even if it's windy and you end up getting blown to the other side of the lake by accident, you can just get out and walk around and drag your tube around the periphery of the lake, or I'll come and help you, paddle back. But that's an opportunity that's really fun, fished out there. If you see my fly box down below, the types of flies that I do well with at that particular lake, a lot of damsel nymphs in different colors, a dark kind of an olive damsel nymph. This is Marv's fly, which Jane McKevitt gave me the pattern to, which I appreciate. It's a, what is it, Jane? It's supposed to represent a damsel nymph. And these other flies, some olive woolly buggers. And also, if the fish are rising, dry flies on the surface work really well. Caddis or parachute Adams, purple haze, just the basic stuff.
And that Mars fly, actually, I learned about through the women fly fishing group. I think it's Shirley that's her favorite fly. Or somebody can help me out with that, but I know that there are many of you that think that's a great fly. So
Well, thank you. I think it's a great fly now too. Thanks for turning me on to that one. So, because that one's landed me lots of fish. So, in particular in lake fishing, especially if it's just got a little bit of weight in it, a little bit of that lead-free wire in there, which is great. So, questions about that? I can give you directions. If you're in the town of Bellevue, you're going to turn right on Pine Street and just follow that all the way back. Pine Street turns into Muldoon Canyon Road. And you're just going to keep going until you see the green gate that says private, and you'll see my truck there and my float tube and a blue picnic table and a porta potty, and you'll know you're in the right spot. It's really easy to find. It's not too far down that road out Muldoon Canyon, but that's a nice
Jill?
place. Yeah.
This is Liz. Can you send me that whole little thing there that I can add that to the post and meet up?
Yes, absolutely. No problem.
Okay.
Good.
Do you have my email?
Yes, I do.
I'll text it to you.
All right.
Thanks.
Presentation it'll be on our website.
I'll put it on there. So, because a lot of you bought tubes, right?
I think there's like, what, 10 of us, Liz?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was at least 10 of us. I mean, we ended up getting 15 altogether, but one lady bought 3, had some for some family members.
Oh,
Yeah. So at least probably 12 of us.
So it might
And a
be,
couple people already had them.
might be the first opportunity that you've gotten to even try to inflate it and see how it works. So it would be a great place to do that. So
Jill, where do you do guided trips?
Morgan and I both guide all around the valley. We've got Silver Creek and the Big Wood. You know, the Big Wood is like 40 miles of fishable water with 48 access points. It's a big fishery. We fish down south at Magic Reservoir, below that dam and that whole region, and up north, if you want to drive up over Trail Creek, we've got the Big Lost River and just all sorts of high mountain lakes. All around is the answer. Everything within drivable distance.
Good deal.
Yeah. So what flies to fish? You don't need that many flies this time of year. It's basic common stuff that we all use and we're all successful with. These are just flies out of my fly box that I pulled out last night of my basic, day's worth box. So zebra midges in black and red, prince nymphs, and the king prince, which are the bigger ones, pheasant tails, beta nymphs, parachute Adams, and purple haze, which are really just the same fly, only the purple haze has purple dubbing. Caddis work all season. They're great. Yellow Sallies will be working in June when you guys are here, because yellow Sallies are stoneflies that have hatched out into their adult stage. So that will probably be a really good fly in June. The pink Cahills, PMDs will be coming off pretty well. You'll probably be at the end of the brown drake hatch, and I think you're probably going to miss that, but the green drake hatch should be coming off pretty well on the big wood by that time. So having some green drakes in your box would be beneficial. Ants and beetles, like Morgan said, always work. And some streamers, some small streamers, black and olive, woolly buggers, whatever you've got. Those kinds of things will be productive for you on the big wood. Yeah. And the sizes are listed there on the hatch charts. Do you guys have questions about flies? Basic etiquette when you're in the valley. It's always nice to communicate with other people. If there's somebody there and it's obvious that they're going fishing or they're going out, don't low hole them or walk through their spot. Walk around, go a long ways down or away from them, or communicate with them. Sometimes I'll be getting my fishing stuff on and somebody else will be there fishing. I'm like, hey, do you like to fish upstream or downstream? And they'll say, oh, I like to go downstream. And you're like, okay, then you go downstream, I'll go upstream and I won't bother you. So just communicate with people. They never mind if you talk to them. If you see several cars at a spot, with the exception of Colorado Gulch, because that's the dog walking area. But if you see several cars at a spot, maybe choose a different place. There are 48 access points. Just pick one where there aren't a lot of people. Keep fish wet, especially on Silver Creek. Do the 1, 2, 3 lift and snap a quick photo and get that fish right back down into the water. Have your license and abide by regulations. I was ice fishing last weekend and I got checked by Fish and Game, and I had my new license. So remember that January has rolled around and you've got to have your new license going. Barbless hooks, pinch those barbs. Catch and release is encouraged. It's not required everywhere on the Big Wood. Some places on the Big Wood you can bait fish and you can keep fish. But we like to keep the fish in the river. I at least do. So barbless hooks and try to release them if you can. Stay on the trails or within the high water mark. People don't like you walking across their yards and their lawns, so that would be trespassing. So stay down in the water and stay on the the trails that are established for fishermen, so that you don't have any confrontations with homeowners. Speak quietly and enjoy nature, especially around houses or when float tubing. I know that if you're in Kilpatrick Pond on Silver Creek, people have, I have a friend who's very loud and he screams and yells and speaks very loudly the whole time he's fishing in that pond on Silver Creek in his float tube. And he got back to his car one day and there was a note on his windshield that said, "You are the loudest talker I have ever heard. Would you please just be quiet when you're fishing in the pond? We would like to enjoy nature and not listen to you speak the whole time you're there." So just, be polite, be quiet if you can, so that you're not just screaming and yelling. Pack out trash, even if it's not yours. You know how that works. I know all you ladies do that anyway. Fill the net if you can. Questions about that? No?
We did get a question just about open waters for early May. Unfortunately, the Big Wood and Silver Creek will be closed in early May. However, you can get to some waters a little bit further away from us that'll be open. The Lost, the Littlewood, and I believe parts of the Salmon remain open.
Right. And the Big Wood and Silver Creek will open up again.
Memorial Day weekend.
What's the date on that?
The 28th. Peekaboo Angler does do an opening day party if anybody's in the area. We do a big party on the airstrip behind the store, and we'll have vendors and music and food. And that'll be Friday, the 27th, the Friday of Memorial Day weekend, to get things started off for the start of our 2022 fishing season. So that's free for anybody to join if you're in the area and would like to join us.
Hey, Jill, on that pond, on the Silver Creek, on the,
Yes, it's the Idaho Ranch Pond. Yes.
how deep is it?
How deep is it? It's a spring-fed pond. It is probably 12 or 15 feet deep. And the bottom 3 feet is probably, the bottom 3 feet, I would say, is pretty heavily vegetation
Okay.
around the springs. Great fish in there, fun to fish.
What type of sinking line do you use?
No sinking line, floating line with a long leader, maybe a 10 or 12 foot long leader with floating line.
Oh, okay, floating line. Okay, got it.
Yeah, good question. You don't have to change out your line. You don't need sinking line.
Okay, long lead.
Yeah, long leader.
Thank you.
You bet. Well, Morgan and I are both really excited and looking forward to you guys visiting and coming up here. We're more than willing to answer questions if you want to email us or call us. Do you have any questions or anything you want to know about?
I did get one more about the Little Lost. If we have any information on that. I'm not familiar with that, Jill.
I don't have any information on the Little Lost. Is that the one that somebody was trying to find last time and you got lost?
Ah,
Yes.
Okay, so who is it? Is that you, Liz?
but Jill, we found it. We found, we went to the Big Lost River.
Yeah, but that's different than the Little Lost. The Little
That's
Lost,
different from the Big Lost, but we went to the Big Lost and caught quite a few fish.
Yes,
And
yes.
You know, on the map where we went. Yeah.
I remember it. So the Big Lost is up over Trail Creek
That's-
Summit. And that's quite a little drive. It'll take you an hour and a half to get up there, hour and 15 minutes maybe. You can go up there and fish. But sometimes I wonder if you want to drive that far, if you're already here, maybe take advantage of what's right here and fish the Big Wood and Silver Creek. But
It's a
if you
long
want to drive, it is a long trip, but if you want to drive, the Big Lost is always open and it has good fishing if you want to drive up over Trail Creek Pass.
But their signage is really bad.
Yes, the signage is bad. That's correct. You've got Wild Horse, like the Wild Horse Creek up there and Copper Basin area up there. And there's good fishing up there if you can find it. You have to explore and figure it out though. Right. And there are some high mountain lakes that'll probably be open if somebody wants to put their wilderness light tube on their back and hike, 2 miles up a hill and find a lake.
Yeah, we can definitely give you guys recommendations for other waters as well.
Definitely. If you want to go to somewhere else, just ask Morgan and I will recommend something to you.
Jill and Morgan, thank you so much. Jill, do you want to take off your screen share?
You bet.
Great. All right. Final questions, anyone? You're getting lots of thank yous from lots of ladies in the club, ladies.
You're all very welcome. Yeah, please email us if you guys start thinking about your trip. Email, call. I'm happy to answer questions as they come up.
I was already excited about this trip and now I'm really excited.
I know,
So
I can't wait.
I'm itching
wanna go
to
fish.
go. So I think we'll have a terrific time. It'll be great. Thank you very, very, very much.